Garen and a Dragon Named Goose. Chapter 11. Garen felt like his whole world was spinning. "Me? How?" Darius just stared at him as the waves lapped into the stilts, and Dack's frantic breathing gathered pace. When Darius spoke again, it was in a calm and quiet voice. "Connect with your animal, Garen. Use your dragon to find the spirit." Goose sat before him, his sharp tail wagging at his rear. "But I—" "No buts, child." Darius's shout sent a tremor through Garen. There are times in life when you must make a leap, when all the best preparations are laid bare and only action can save you. He motioned to Dack on the floor. "This is one of those times, boy. It will define you, make or break you. What will you do? Please," Dack's grandfather said, his hand gripping Dack's ever tighter. Garen clenched his fists, unable to look the old man in the eye. I can't." Garen couldn't even finish the sentence. Darius knew he couldn't connect to Goose. Everyone did. Garen was useless, destined to be an outcast, to be left behind by everyone and forgotten, a fate worse than the spiritless. Across the shores, the bright lights of Baytown twinkled over the sea. All of his friends and family would be there, having fun, making memories. And here was Dack and his grandfather, suffering, shunned away in the darkness. "And for what? I thought you were not going to cry." "Shut up," Garen yelled, wiping his tears. He'd had enough of it all, of Darius, of the rumors, of the trouble he kept causing his friends. Like embers of rage, he felt the thoughts burn within him. He didn't want to run from anything anymore. He didn't want to live in a future where people looked down on him, or on others like Dack, or his grandfather, or any of the spiritless. Dack stirred, raising a feeble hand. "Don't worry about me, Garen. It's—" A fit of coughing took his words. The burning in Garen's center became stronger. He turned to Dack's grandfather. "I'm not going to let Dack die." The old man held his gaze and nodded. Garen sat beside Dack, placing the dragon before him and turning his focus inward. With a roar, the raging river surged forth in his mind as if catapulted by his anger, violently churning and smashing against the crumbling banks. Goose's dark form across the water wavered like a shadow in a storm. He pushed through, trying to build his bridge, each step swept away by the rapids before it could even form. "Focus, Garen!" called Darius's voice. "Or will you let Dack die?" "No," Garen screamed back in his mind. His bridge held for a moment against the onslaught before tumbling away again. "How useless are you?" Darius taunted, the distant voice no less cutting. "No wonder the girl held the flower for your friend." Fury erupted inside Garen, and the whole vision rocked. Fire licked at the bank's edge, catching on grass and low branches. The river itself seemed to bleed crimson as the heat flared, before hot, bubbling lava consumed it. The swells died, the thoughts and fears burnt and gone. An inferno rampaged around them, the trees cracking and falling. Lava swelled to the banks. Searing heat lit up Garen's legs and through him, smoldering into his core. Pain mixed with power, heat mixed with anger. The vision halted, slipping from his grip as pain threatened to rip it away. Then the ground shook. Gone was Goose across the remnants of the bank. In his place stood a monstrous dragon, peering down at Garen with soul-piercing eyes. It opened its mouth, flames rained down, and Garen was gone. Nothing, just ashes in the wind, floating and free in the flames, all of his worries and pain seared away and reduced to mere cinders. Yet, amidst the ashen silence, there was something, a beating of two drums, slowly coming into harmony as they sped up, until there was only one, and with each thundering boom came visions. Mount Area and its deep crater of red, the chasm of Trove and its endless depths. Then, something Garen didn't recognize, a place of mangled trees and ruins, a pillar of light extending to the sky out of a shattered glass palace, its fractured spires reaching for the heavens. A man stood by a crumbled arch of stone, dressed in black robes, his face hidden. As if sensing a presence, he spun around. With a sharp inhale, the trance was broken. The world rushed back around Garen, the sea lapping ahead as the pounding of drums in his ears faded, crisp and warm salt-laden air filling his lung. Dax gasping for air, and then there was Goose. Garen could feel him even before he saw him. They were one. It felt familiar, like an echo of a dream he only now remembered, or a limb he'd always had, just never used. He connected, But there was no time to be glad, or to know at what cost. Each pull of air a burning lance in his chest. He looked at Dack. The pulsing of the spirit stone was weaker than before, as weak as the boy's breath. "Darius, tell me what to do." "All I know," Darius said after a slight pause, his eyes alive with interest, "is that you must feed the signal with your own spirit and coax it near." Garen squeezed the stone tight, and a strange chill ran through his finger. Goose came between his arms, his tail winding around his hand. Something surged through the connection with the dragon, a feeling. Goose stared at him expectantly, before peering to the sea and then back. The sea. Garen looked behind. He couldn't see or feel anything. "Goose, I don't know!" The dragon pushed his rough horns and scaly head against Garen's forehead, his big eyes staring straight into Garen's own. "See," Garen heard, a faint whisper in his mind. "See! Go!" The world exploded into a kaleidoscope of color around the dragon. Blues and gold swirled around Darius in blinding, glistening ribbons, while deep emerald tones pulsed between them. Goose was a mix of deep reds, a thick rope of it connecting to Garen's center. The only place Garen could look without his eyes feeling as if they might melt was Dack and his grandfather. Besides the faint green of the spirit stone, they were a dull and lifeless gray. But with each pulse of the stone, Garen saw a thin green line wisping away into nothing just a few meters away, like spider silk caught in the breeze. It was too weak and felt slippery and alien, so different to the fire, like quality of his own energy. Garen knew from Arden that different types could be made by channeling through the meridians and chakras, as if brewing a potion, but that helped nothing. Garen hadn't the faintest notion how to do it. Instead, he just focused everything he had on the stone and the pulsing line between him and Goose. A smoky cloud of red spewed up the center of his body from his core. It took everything he had not to pull away against the torrent of pain. Darius stood over them, his gaze seemingly following the movement of energy across Garen's body. "Do not try to channel the energy yourself, Garen. Focus only on the connection with Goose." Garen tried to follow the advice, to push his energy down the thick cord to his dragon. "Goose, help Dack," he called in his mind. Garen felt a pull through the line, strong enough that he almost fell forward. Between Goose's scales came a spreading golden glow, pulsing and alive, as if a small sun was ricocheting inside him. One scale filled completely with light, and then turned to dust. Another scale followed, then another. Garen jolted alert as realization crashed over him. What Goose was trying to do, spirit form. A scale that had disappeared snapped back into place as if startled by Garen's thoughts. Garen and a dragon named Goose, Chapter 11, Part 2. "Let's go," the thought burst into his mind from the dragon. Goose was grasping at some part of Garen, deep and vital. There was fear in that place, a tangible sense of all Garen was, or had been, that he'd never be again. Garen took one last look at Baytown and the lights. Cool tears rolled down his face. What did he have to lose? Another pull came from the dragon, and this time Garen didn't fight it. He let go. Euphoria surged within him, shivers rippling up his spine and over his skin. Goose's scales began to reignite in quick succession, shafts of light pouring between the gaps. As the last segment of his body gave way, the dragon's dark wings stretched wide. Drops of luminous light scattered in the air as he broke into an infinite number of glittering fragments, spreading through the air like a cloud of fireflies. For a blissful moment, Garen's tension vanished into the cloud of shimmering light, but the relief was short-lived. Each fragment of Goose seemed to tug mercilessly at their bond, siphoning more and more of his energy. "Garen, your nose," Dack's grandfather said, concern in his voice. Garen raised a hand to find a small trail of blood. He wiped it away, and his hand dropped back into his lap like a heavy piece of driftwood. His limbs felt hollow. Darkness encroached on the edges of his vision. He focused on each breath, willing himself to continue as Goose's spirit stretched steadily toward the sea, tugging along with the green strand. He had to hold on just a while longer. With each passing second, the pull of energy only became stronger, and the pain greater. "Ebar!" Darius suddenly called. The wolf howled as she leapt past Garen, evaporating into spirit form mid-air. Entwining with Goose's spirit she went, her howl echoing. Darius looked at Garen, then at his bloody nose. "To think you would push yourself this far," He paused and took a deep breath. "I will honor your courage, Garen." Darius's hand came down on Garen's shoulder. Energy thundered through Garen's center as if it had been struck by lightning, a bright blue filling his mind's eye. Sand and light swirled around them as Ebba howled, the stands of her light and Goose's accelerating out into the waters of the sea. Darius's grip on Garen's shoulder was like a cold iron vice. Across the shallow waters of the tide the spirits moved, ribbons of light dancing across the surface of the water. Garen heard the chime-like calls of Goose echoing over the waves, and saw the shimmering form of a wolf flicker in the silver moonlight. Nausea rose, but Garen swallowed it down. His body was on fire, the strain only growing. Even Darius was groaning through gritted teeth. Suddenly there was a howl, and the strands of energy plunged into the sea, the night returning to dark. With a deep, rasping breath, Dack's body arched off the ground, the spirit stone shining without pause. "Look!" Dack's grandfather shouted, a bony finger pointing out to the sea. The flowing spirits of Ebba and Goose had risen above the waves, and beneath them came a green light in the water, moving towards the shore. As the wave broke, a large shape appeared, an Aryan emperor turtle. Darius gasped, his breath ragged as he let his hand go. Garen tried to see. All the colors in his vision were still swimming, and it took all his effort to remain upright. But slowly he began to make out the details as the large shape lumbered closer. The turtle was immense, its rugged shell as wide as Dack's wagon and half as tall. Thick, gnarled limbs extended from the shell, scales scraping the sand as it moved with surprising grace. An ancient power emanated from its hawk-like face, sharp and wise eyes gazing out above a tapered emerald beak tangled with seaweed. Muscles rippled across its corded neck as it unfurled from its armored body. The shell gleamed greens and blues in the soft moonlight. "I've not seen one of those since I was a boy," remarked Dack's grandfather, his eyes wide. "We thought 'em all dead." Darius slumped down, stunned. "Most spirit animals are those from the old world. It is rare for one to obtain a luminant spirit." Garen was still trying to catch his breath, his heart beating as if to break free from his chest. The dancing spirits of Goose and Ebba came back into physical form, and Garen felt the strain ease. Around the turtle, fish filled the tumbling water, flapping onto the sand as the tide washed in. Dack suddenly sat up, and his grandfather helped him to his feet. "Garen, are you okay?" he said, looking at Garen's bloody nose. "I'm okay," Garen managed to say, his throat dry. His thoughts cast back to when he received Goose. "You need to name your spirit, Dack. Quickly!" Dack looked conflicted, but nodded and stepped forward towards his spirit animal, his small eyes wide. The huge turtle stopped moving, and its neck stretched even further towards Dack. The large boy put out a hand, touching the turtle's forehead. Dack's grandfather followed behind, looking as if he might burst with pride. "I can hear his name! Feel it!" Dack said as he held his hand on the scales, the huge turtle closing its eyes. "I named the Aegis." The golden light lining the shell and spilling into the water began to fade. Dack smiled, turning to face his granddad. "I got a spirit animal!" With one arm, he swept the small man off his feet. "Easy, boy! You'll break my ribs! Put me down!" the old man said, laughing. Dack obliged, and the old man embraced him once more. "If only your parents could have seen this." There they stayed for a moment, both with tears streaming down their faces, till the old man broke the embrace and hobbled back to the shack excitedly. "Now to catch these fish! Never in my years have I seen so many in the bay." Garen felt like his own tears should be coming, but he felt so empty, so faint. Everything he could see was blurring in and out of focus, all the color fading away. The ache behind his eyes felt like two heavy stones crashing together. Goose had curled up in his lap and was already snoring, looking so peaceful. Darius caught Garen as he fell back, the mage's arms shaking as he lowered him carefully to lay Garen's head in his lap. "Easy, now Garen, breathe." Garen's head lolled. Along the edge of the furthest dock, he noticed a small boat mooring with 4 figures crouched along its bow, strange shining objects in their hands. Then the view was blocked by Dack looming closer, the smile on his face quickly fading. "Garen, are you okay?" Garen smiled weakly, but words just wouldn't come. washed away by the relief, flooding him in irresistible waves. Dack was going to be okay. He'd helped someone, done something worth doing. He wasn't useless. Rest now, child. Darius's finger, fizzing with a blue light, touched Garen on the forehead.